Hello, and welcome to the Delusional Boyfriend Book Club. My name is Courtney, and I'll be your host. And today we're talking about September's BL manga of the month, Happy Crappy Life. This is by Harada. It was originally published in Japan in 2018, and then in 2023, we got the US English translated physical releases. It was originally published in like an ongoing BL magazine. This is by Kuma Publishing, and it is the first book by Harada that I've read, I believe. And it is also, I think, maybe the first Kuma book I've read. Don't quote me on that. But it is definitely the publisher that I have the least of in my collection. And I was, curious how it would be. And there was a couple typos, which is you find that every once in a while in an English translation, there'll be a couple typos. But otherwise, I thought that the publishing company did an incredible job on this. The art is super, super good. Hold on, let me see. It's very funny. This is going to be a comedy that touches on a lot of different dark tropes. And the fandom, I would say, is pretty small around this. I hear every once in a while people talking about this book, but I would not say that it's one of the most popular stories. I wouldn't say that either of the characters are like neither of the characters have a ton of edits made of them or a huge fan base or merch around them. So I was interested to see how I would feel about this. A couple people gave me a heads up and some trigger warnings about the content in this. So I didn't know, I knew it was going to be a comedy, but I didn't know why there were so many trigger warnings if it was going to be a comedy. So putting this on the calendar, I just kind of wanted to read it. I bought these because the cover, if you can see, like the artwork, they're I think they're so cute. I love that they're like grungy and kind of like pathetic. They're not perfect characters. I'm not a perfect person, and I really love characters that smoke cigarettes and sit in alleys and wear their pajamas for the whole day, stuff like that. Like those people endear me to them very quickly. So, anyways, I was excited to jump into this book. It has 5 volumes, all available in English, I do believe. Again, I'm not quite sure if the 5th one is out in English yet, but I know that there are 5 volumes. I own 2 of them, and today we're just going to cover volume 1. Our tropes for this series are going to be bisexual, neighbors, pegging, comedy, bottom versus bottom. And this, I'm so excited to tell you guys, is our first switch couple. Hallelujah. Thank you. This is a dream come true to finally see a verse couple or switch couple. Or my friend Keaton told me the other day, he's like, well, I call it flipping. He's like, usually like when you go into it with the intention of both of you getting to bottom and both of you getting to top, you'll call it flipping. And I was like, okay, that's cute. So that's our first couple that explores that dynamic, which I really love. Also, there's some magical realism going on here, which is my favorite. That's my favorite category of fiction. It's my favorite genre, I guess, is magic realism. I like when everything in the world is totally normal and then magic happens and it's coming from something or someone. And that always makes me very, very happy. So I really like that about this story. I also like the trope going on here, brunette versus blonde. And also like, he's not a vagrant, but he's not like a bum, but he's living off his grandma's inheritance, the brown-haired character, and the other guy is like a salary man who used to be a social elite. So we've got kind of like a bum versus salary man dynamic going on, which I think is really funny. It is a comedy, but there are a lot of trigger warnings and a lot of serious topics addressed with very minimal sensitivity. In fact, I don't know if this is intentional. If it's intentional by the author, then the triggering content is talked about lightheartedly, either to reflect how society actually doesn't take sexual assault very seriously at all and how normalized it is and how normalized it is to ignore victims. Either this is dealt with humor to kind of show you how the world just kind of laughs at you when you tell them that something scary or assaulty happened to you. So either that's the reason, and it's very actually deep that the author is handling this with humor, or the author is making light of sexual assault, in which case it's not that deep and it's kind of shitty. So it's a tough read in that way. So if you have triggers regarding sexual assault, if you have triggers regarding toxic, abusive, reoccurring bullies, or sexual abuse, if you have any triggers like that, I would go so cautiously into this good night, because that is what we're talking about. So our triggers are going to be so this is not a trigger, but there is a lot of kink in this. A lot of kink, and if you're not comfortable with kink, then I might steer clear. But they do talk about kink, about humiliation, sexual humiliation and societal humiliation. Also, there's a ton of SA and a ton of victim blaming, and when I'm talking about SA, I'm talking about the worst, most reoccurring abuse and manipulation of a person that you could think of. And that is, like I said, made very light of by the author and by the other characters. So, with all of those tropes in mind, I'm going to dive into the summary of this story. If you haven't read it yet, definitely I recommend it to people who don't have really bad triggers for those subjects that I just mentioned. And I do recommend it to people with a really dark sense of humor and a really kinky sense of humor. This is going to be for you. So, our two characters are going to be Kasuya and Kazuya. Kasuya is the blonde, and he is a salaryman. He's pretty heartless. He doesn't really have a lot of empathy, and he's new to social exile. He's lived his whole life being perfect, golden child. His darkest secrets are revealed to the world, and now he has to kind of live with everyone knowing who he really is. And he's new to that, and he doesn't really know how to take it. On the flip side, we have Kuzuya, and Kuzuya is a brunette. He is a crybaby. He is a returned local who has been away from this town for 10 years, but his grandma died. So he goes back, gets his inheritance, has been living off of that inheritance. And after a decade away from this town, is experiencing some reoccurring bullying by his high school bully. So he is a pro at being in social exile. His humiliation took place in high school by his bully, and it was sexual humiliation, and it was intense. I mean, some of the worst that I've ever seen. So those are our two characters. One is jobless and unemployed and living next door to a guy who has just moved from Tokyo to this tiny town because there was a scandal at work that he was involved with the boss's daughter. So he got sent to the country to work in that branch. He wasn't all the way fired, and he's hoping that he can work his way back up the ladder to move back to Tokyo and get his life back. They are neighbors. So the neighbor trope is one that I always like, and you see it a lot in manga, and I just think it's really cute. So we've got these two living next door to each other, and the story starts out with our brunette character, Kuzuya. He is taping a dildo to a fan, and he wants to make a whirling fan toy for himself. So he straps his toy to this fan, and it flies off right as his neighbor is walking out, and it like hits the neighbor, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, give that back to me, please don't touch it." And the neighbor throws it back at him, and he's like, "The hell is this?" And he's like, "Well, it's just, I was just making this fan for myself." And he's like, "You're a sicko. I hate this neighbor of mine." He goes to work. That neighbor of his shows up and kind of outs him to all of work. And all of work doesn't know the full story of what that scandal was in Tokyo that got him banished. And Kuzuya, the brunette who is jobless, he shows up at his work to like have lunch with some people from town that he knows, and he outs him, and he tells everybody that basically he liked to take it from the boss's daughter, and they were doing it in the office, and somebody took pictures of them and was threatening, blackmailing to release those if he didn't leave town, break up with the boss's daughter, etc. So the boss like sends him away, so there's not going to be any more of a scandal, and he's hoping that he can, like I said, work his way back up the ladder. But now it sounds like everybody knows about it. So he thought maybe not everybody had heard about the incident, but everybody's heard about the incident. And now this guy who lives next door to him just told everyone in his new office what happened. So he gets super drunk, he's crying, and he can't get himself home. So the guy who outed him feels bad. They live next door to each other, and he's like, "Don't worry, I'll take you home." So he takes him back home, and he like gets him to his apartment, and then a second later he gets a knock on the door, and the guy had come back And he was like, I'm so drunk, I locked myself out and I peed my pants. And he's like, oh my God, okay, come in. You can come in, whatever, it's fine. So he comes in and they're talking and he gives him something to wear and he washes his clothes. And he's like, okay, so I usually like to take it from women, but I've always kind of wanted to take it from a guy. And we learn that both of them apparently think they're straight. They both like it in the back door and they kind of bond over this. And in their drunken stupor, they also get together. So this is their first hookup. And at this point, it's the blonde who is the receiver. And we learn that both of them really want to receive. Neither one of them has like been in a relationship like that thus far because they both have been kind of playing at straight. So then the next day when Kazuya is at work, he is looking, or Kasuya, the blonde, is at work. He is looking at a like dating website and gets some D pics from a girl, like a lady boy, and he is like responding to them when who shows up at his next door neighbor. He's like sitting out at the cafeteria. He talks to the next door neighbor for a second. And then this guy shows up and freaks his next door neighbor out. And his next door neighbor runs away. And so they're back at the apartments and he gets a knock on the door. The blonde does. And it's the brunette this time. The brunette says, can I please come in and get some refuge? I helped you when you were drunk. Now, will you help me? I'm running away from that guy I ran away from in the cafeteria was my high school bully. I've been gone for 10 years. I'm nervous to run into him again. Can you please let me come into your house so I can stay with you? And he's like, no. And he's like, let me into your house. So they have this dynamic, this relationship where they're like not even friendly to each other. They're hookup buddies, but they're not friends. They're not even buddies. They're just hooking up. And they have like very little sympathy for each other, very little understanding of each other. And they're kind of almost too alike to be compatible. I love the dynamic. It's not one that you see all the time. Bottom versus bottom isn't something you see all the time. And I love that both of them are very sure and assertive of what they want. And they're willing to give the other person what they need if it means they can get something back. So they're open and honest about how transactional they are and shallow they are. And I just love them. They're very themselves. They're very flawed. There's no, oh, I've a perfect person who made it to 30 and I haven't found the love of my life yet because I'm just so pick me perfect. And now here is my big, strong alpha who fell in love with me and sees that I'm more beautiful than everybody else when I take my glasses off. There's none of that. These are two flawed characters who are not even pretending to like each other, who have a ton of problems and are very outwardly embarrassing of themselves. They are constantly making fools of themselves. And I think that's really fun. They don't even want each other. These are two characters who do not want each other. They aren't compatible. And yet they're in the boondocks together. They're living in the country. They're desperate. They're honest about how desperate they are, how lonely they are. And I like that. And I want to remind you guys, I'm from the country. And these kinds of relationships happen all the time where you're just like, especially queer relationships. There's only like 7 queer people in the whole town that I'm from, it's very small, slim pickings. So sometimes you end up in these toxic relationships thinking you're really into somebody or just being reliant on them, knowing that they're the only person who can keep you company. Everyone else is your cousin or everyone else you've already dated before. So love this dynamic, love the comedy that's going through here, love how they're always at odds with each other. But then we get the really dark underside of this. So he's running away from this high school bully and he comes inside and they're drinking. So while Kazuya while the brunette jobless guy is hanging out at the blonde's house at his apartment trying to stay away from his high school bully, they get bored and they rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to bottom this time. They both want to bottom. And it turns out it's going to be the brunette. So he gets to, and they realize at this point that he also was the one who was sending him dick pics earlier. So very funny. He kind of catfishes him. And while they're hooking up, he looks up at the sliding glass door and who is there but his high school bully, his stalker. He freaks out, he screams. And then when they go to look at the door, he's nowhere to be found. And so the blonde is like, you're making this up. You're crazy. You're being dramatic, whatever. He's not taking him very seriously at all. So he goes to work the next day and the brunette's like, don't leave me. I'm really scared. I haven't been to town. I just got back to town after 10 years and I'm scared he's going to get me. And he's like, what does that even mean? So he leaves for work, the blonde does, and the brunette was right. When the blonde comes back from work, the brunette is being completely raped by Leo, his high school bully. He is literally wrapped up in the futon, tied up in the futon. So just his bottom half is sticking out. And when he gets caught by the blonde, he doesn't even stop. He finishes, and he like makes a point to finish and he walks out and just like leaves him on the ground. It's horrifying. And we go from things being so funny, like the whole time these two main characters are hanging out, they're fixing this bib on this little statue, and the statue is so cute, and they're doing this little thing where they just like fix his little clothes for him, and there's all this humor. They're like they make fun of each other, they're like strangling each other, they're like all of this like funny back and forth, and you're in this haha humor lightheartedness of this book, and then it slams you with this rape scene where he's tied up in a futon and he's screaming to stop. He's like begging to be stopped, and the blonde comes in, the guy walks out who's assaulting him, and the blonde is like, I wish that was me. I wish it was me who was being assaulted. You're so lucky that you're being assaulted. And this is where the story starts to like take on this other flavor entirely. It's not just a comedy. And it makes you question, because even the way he handles it with humor, the way he's not judgmental about this guy, but he's also not sympathetic to this guy. And he's like, it's so complex. And I'd love to know what you guys thought about this, because I kept going back and forth. Is the author just completely unsympathetic to sexual assault? Or does the author realize that most victims, when they tell somebody about, even children, when children are victimized, it takes 3 adults before anybody takes any action. When adults are victimized, people say, what were you wearing? Were you guys on a date? Did you agree to go on the date? Did you go back to his hotel room? Like, there's all these questions. And this author, in a way, it feels like they're making a commentary on that, where it's like, you must have liked it. You must have liked it. And they're making light of that cultural experience where victims are not listened to, and they're not sympathized with, and they're not heard. Um, and I kept rotating between, is the author just completely ignorant, or is the author commenting on this is how victims are treated? It sucks to see it when someone laughs at your assault, or somebody's still friends with the person who assaulted you, or whatever, or someone makes it seem like your fault. Where I'm from in the country, there's a lot of people who were bullied in high school and ended up marrying their bullies. And those were people who got worn down time and time again by somebody who would not take no for an answer, people who kept pregnancies that I don't think they wanted to keep, and that I don't think were consensual in the first place, including, I know one person specifically from my hometown who got pregnant with, she was 15, 16 years old, got pregnant with a 22-year-old's child, and they were second cousins. So those things happen in these towns, and people laugh at it, and they talk about them and laugh about how their kid's going to have deformities, and like, they know that this is statutory, and they know that this is incest, and they see that that child is now going to grow up in this, it's a baby raising a baby in a very harmful environment, and everyone just looks the other way, and they all joke about it, and it ends up being this like town legend jokey thing. And that is what I felt like at the end of the day. That was my, after volume 1, maybe volume 2 I'll change my mind, but after volume 1 I was like, I think the author is commenting on that there's a lot of instances in this world where we look the other way when something is clearly not right, when someone is screaming no, when someone is asking for help, they're reaching out. And that's what he's doing to this character. He's saying, this is not the first time that I've been assaulted, and he tells him his entire backstory. He says, this is so much more humiliating than you peeing your pants or you getting caught getting pegged by the boss's daughter. When I was in high school, I was very popular with the girls, and I met Leo one day. I was new to school, and I made fun of him because he couldn't read kanji and he mispronounced my name. And after that moment, he always hated me. And before a marathon where I was going to impress all the girls, he and I quote, had his way with me in the locker room. And it shows you in the manga, it's very explicit actually, it shows you him getting raped in the locker room right before a marathon. Then he says he went out to run the marathon, and he so badly wanted to be cool with the other kids, even though he's been being picked on by Leo and he's becoming this social outcast, that he runs really hard and he's in front of all the other kids in the marathon. And then because he had just been assaulted, he has an accident and shits on the track in front of everyone, has explosive diarrhea, and everyone laughs at him and he becomes a social pariah. And ever since that day, he has been continuously victimized by his bully, and not a single other person has wanted to be his friend. He's been a complete social pariah, except for a girl who's a year younger than him. After this incident had passed, a girl who's a year younger than him, who wasn't there for the incident, she ends up dating him, and her name is Botan. So he's had this good experience with Botan, and he is like left town, and he's trying to get over his high school bully, and now he just wants this blonde guy to like understand, like, I had this awful experience, I'm trying to get over it, I'm trying to, like, regain whatever swagger I have left after everyone's knows that I take it in the back door. I can't even get off unless I use the back door. I, don't like men, I like women, but now I have this special kink where I need to be the receiver. And there's only been one person who's done that for me. It was my friend, it was my girlfriend Botan back in the day. She was really cool about it, but things just didn't work out. I moved away, whatever. So he tells that whole story, and the blonde just is like, he is not, again, not sympathetic. He's like laughing at him and also like, oh my God, this is the most embarrassing thing in the world. I would have literally jumped off a bridge. Like, I can't believe that you still show your face anywhere. I cannot believe that. And yet he still isn't showing any sympathy for the actual assault, for the actual incident. It is really heartless. And so the blonde, I think a lot of this story, I'm guessing, my prediction is throughout the next volumes, is the blonde understanding what it's like to be that kind of social pariah for the first time in his life, and getting that sympathy for this person who he doesn't think is good enough for him. He's like, oh, I'm settling hooking up with this like loser who doesn't have a job, who is like the town pariah. I'm settling for him. And I think as the volumes go on, he'll realize he's not settling. He's not better than him. It is totally human to have embarrassing moments, and it's totally human to want to be loved by someone and understood by someone who sees all those moments and still finds you sexy and still wants to get down with you. And I hope that's how the story keeps going. But I will say there are multiple depictions of sexual assault in this book, almost equal to the consensual ones. So that part was a little bit hard to get through. So after we have that moment, we have some other scenes come up, and continuously they're going over to the statue in front of their apartment complex, and they're like moving the bib on him because it keeps falling down. And so at this point they like move the bib up like on top of his little head, kind of covers his face because they don't want it to keep falling down. They're like, maybe it'll stay up if it's up there. So then they see each other the next day at a grocery store, and both of them are reaching for this pen that has beads on it, and it looks like anal beads, and both of them want it, and both of them look at each other and they're like, I know what you're going to use that for. And he's like, well, you can't have it, it's the last one. So they kind of bicker over this, and on their walk home they see the statue again, and then they go inside, they do rock paper scissors, they hook up, and they're using this like the pen that they just bought, which, like, do not do that at home, kids. Also, don't listen to this podcast unless you're not a kid. So anyways, so they are hooking up, and then they hear knock, like they hear something at the door, and they go look, and it's the statue, and it's moving and it's talking, and they're like, open the door, and the statue says, it's too high, it's too high. They look down at it and they're like, what? And they're like, the bib. So they move the bib back down so it's not covering its face. And they're like, are you alive, little statue? And he's like, yes, I'm a little god. And he's like, I can grant you a wish for helping me. And they say, oh my gosh, we were just looking at sex toys because we're using a pen right now. We're going to buy them online. Can you get us all the sex toys off of this website? And it rains down all the sex toys onto them. I'm sorry if you're watching this video right now and you're seeing me play with my bangs. I am not used to them yet. I think I like them, but they're really distracting. So all these sex toys rain down from the sky, and they're so excited about it. And then one of them gets the brilliant idea. They're like, oh, if we can wish for anything, let's wish for 5 million yen. And they ask for that, and the little statue guy is like, greedy fuckers. And he takes back all the toys and he disappears. And they wake up the next day and they're like, all the toys are gone and we don't have 5 million yen. Like, what is going on? Did our wish not come true? Were we too greedy? Whatever. So then we have the blonde haired character coming back from work, and he like offers to talk to the brown haired character, and he gives him the pen. And the brown haired character is like, he's being awfully nice. And then he disappears. The blonde does. The brown hair character's like, what happened? Where is he? And some people in town tell him that he moved away. And he's like, he moved away. He moved back to Tokyo. And in my mind, I was like, did his wish get granted for the 5 million yen? And he just like ghosted this guy. So then the brunette goes up to the statue, fixes his bib, and says, now you have to give me another wish. I wish that you bring him back. I don't want him to be gone. He's been gone for like 5 days. And he's like, bring him back. And right at that moment, he walks through the door and he's like, oh my God, you're back. And he's like, well, I didn't move. I was just in the city for a second because this guy hurt his hip. And he's like, oh, thank God. I'm so happy you're back. And so we're seeing that this little creature is maybe not a figment of their imagination. That's the magical realism. This is like a real statue of a deity who's willing to grant them wishes, just not willing to grant them greedy wishes, maybe only wishes about love or life or something meaningful like that. So we see them after that hooking up, and they're like, I think outside the office that he works at. So they're hooking up this office, and all of the people that they work with show up and walk in on them hooking up. So yet again, they're outed both as being gay, and everyone is kind of laughing at them. But also in this small town, unlike in Tokyo where everyone is ostracizing them, in this small town, everyone finds out that they're gay and is super accepting of them. And in my small town, there's a couple of people like that who you would think this town is so homophobic, whatever. But the people who own the local grocery store, they have a gay son, and we all knew he was visibly gay since he was very, very, very young. And he's like kind of the town golden boy. And he has Lady Gaga parties at the bar in a town of 700 people in Montana. And he's super welcomed and loved. And in this small town, in this book, it seems like maybe those people are going to be their community. I hope so. I hope they love them. I hope they're better to them. And then this might be slightly out of chronological order, but we see the boss, that it we see one of the characters in town who is maybe the boss of a corporation, which sometimes is code for like the Yakuza or a gang. He is friends with the brunette, and it seems like the brunette has kind of moved back to town, not only because his grandma died and he has an inheritance, but because he was hanging out with this guy from a dating app. And we do learn that because he tells us that. And he says, well, do you want to go to the city? Like, do you want to get out of here? Because I have food corporation, or I want to open up more branches in the city, and you could go work for my son in the city. And he's like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. That would be great. So they're all having dinner, and the blonde is there, and he's like, yeah, how'd you guys meet? And he's like, I met him on a dating app. And then this girl walks in, and it's Botan, the high school girlfriend of his who has pegged him. And he's like, oh my God, why are you here? And she's like, well, that's my dad who just offered you the job. And he's like, what? And the blonde is like, oh my God, you fucked her and her dad. And then he's like, okay, anyways, back to the job offer. I'd love to move to Tokyo. Who's your son? Who am I going to be working for? And at that moment, his son walks in the door, and Botan's like, Oni-chan, which I guess that means my brother. And in walks Leo, the high school bully who's been torturing him for his entire adolescence and now into his adulthood. So he's like, the man who victimized me my entire life and took my virginity is the son of the guy I've been hooking up with and the brother of the girl who I dated in high school. And so he's like literally besides himself. He's like, this is awful. My life is trash. And the blonde, again, heartless, not empathetic. He's like, hits him with an ashtray and goes, apologize to this whole family. What do you mean? I've heard of having a fuck buddy, but you have a fuck family. You fucked everyone in this family and you're not taking any responsibility for it. You live in a town this small and you didn't know they were related. Are you stupid? Are you just ignorant? Do you not care? Are you careless? And part of you is like, feels so bad for him because you're victim blame. This is all victim blaming. You can't scream at a guy who's being confronted with his assaulter. The other part of it's just so funny. He fucked a whole family. If you fucked a sister and of your assaulter and their dad, I feel like at some point you do have to ask yourself, like, why am I not doing any background checks on any of the people I'm hooking up with? Again, I'm not victim blaming. I'm sorry. I take it all back. But the author does it in this way where it dips into depressing, awful, tragic trauma. And then the humor comes right back out. And like, we have this character being repeatedly assaulted. We also see that he fucked the guy's dad, which is funny. It's like his own little revenge. And he fucked the guy's sister. So in a way, the author is like letting him win a little, I guess. I don't know what it is. This book is a complete enigma. I don't know how you can talk about things this dark. I don't know how you can have this much comedy and this much tragedy all wrapped up into one. Obviously that's what good writing is though. And I really love this. I love this story. I might get canceled for saying that. It would go in with like MADK and some of my darker reads though, because it's hard, it's full of triggers. It's hard to understand the dark mentality, dark sense of humor, dark logic, dark coping mechanisms that the characters all go through. There's a lot of kink exploration, all of that. It puts it kind of in its own category. I'm obsessed. I'm gonna read all 5 of these. I hope that we get revenge on the bully. The last scene of this is it's called Love Story, and it's from the stalker's point of view, the bully, Leo. And it shows the day they first met when he messed up his name. He accidentally called the brunette guy Zenko instead of Kuzuya. And so he's like, Zenko's going to be your nickname. And he thinks it's a cute nickname. And meanwhile, the guy who he's bullying thinks he's being bullied and that he's calling him by the wrong name on purpose, and that he's following him around and making him flower crowns to make fun of him and like bully him and make other kids laugh at him. Meanwhile, from this guy's perspective, this stalker's perspective, this sexual assaulter's perspective, he's being romantic. He's making him flower crowns and chasing him around and keeping other people away from him because that's how he's like showing his interest. And again, I'm just like, I am like drawn back into the hallways of my double wide trailer country school where the boys were so fucking mean. They were so fucking mean, and they would bully you into having sex with them. They would literally make you feel so bad about yourself that if they showed a little bit of interest in having sex with you, finally you were like, oh, I must be good enough. Meanwhile, you're so completely fucking out of their league. The boy who bullied me the most in high school, did I end up making out with him at some point? Yes, I did. That all could have ended a lot worse than it did. He's a horrible person. And sometimes in these small communities, you get trapped by these bad people, and people expect you to be civil towards them because it's a small town. Oh, you're friends. Oh, he's picking on you. It's just teasing. You're just friends. You're just buddies. Whatever. I felt like the depiction of this was crazy because a lot of the bullying I think that guy did to me in high school, he thought was flirting. And it was not. It was super gross, and a lot of it had to do with his crush on me, and that crush came out later on, but that teasing, all of it was awful. And I think there were people I knew, people who graduated before I even moved to that town, who were still in town, who had married people like that, who had bullied them and worn them down and got them to accept their love. And their love was extremely forceful, aggressive, violent, sometimes age inappropriate, sometimes like illegal. And I'm not kidding. I mean like illegal. I mean like close to first cousin kind of shit. So anyways, I've seen relationships like that in these small towns where the aggressor honestly believes that's love. They think that is romance. And when we get this love side story at the end of this, we realize that this guy, this stalker, is mentally unwell. He's not just assaulting this guy because he's violent. He really does think they're in a relationship. He thinks that when he hooked up with his sister, that he was like trying to make him jealous. He really believes that they're dating. And he says that at one point. He was like, we're dating. He was like, we have sex all the time. What else would that be? He's like, I rape you all the time. Like, what do you mean I'm not your boyfriend? And I'm thinking back on my high school experience, and I'm like, some of the girls who were dating some of those guys in high school, I don't even think they ever asked them to be their girlfriend. I think they wore them down, got aggressive with them, and then that girl kind of sat in that guy's truck and put a smile on her face and acted like that was her choice because there's no other options, and you don't want to be alone, and you don't want to be a social pariah, and that guy could make rumors about you anyways. And they did. There were so many awful rumors. There's awful rumors about me when I rejected a guy. Like, as soon as you reject them, then they're going to tell the whole school otherwise. So if you don't reject them, if you give them what they want, then maybe they'll go easier on you. I thought this was super relatable. That might be fucking crazy. I didn't have a bully like this in high school who assaulted me. That's not me. That didn't happen to me. I had some other sexually assaulty things happen in my life, but that was not my bully. But it was very relatable to me because I have seen that happen to so many people. A girl I know killed herself in high school after a few different guys came up with a nickname for her. They called her Stumpy, and then they a bunch of them did get her to sleep with them, and she ended up having a boyfriend, having a good life. And when she took her life, I just kept wondering, like, how much of that bullying, that teasing, that like all those guys like sending pictures of her to each other, and the school knew about it, how much of that weighed into it? That's really dark. I'm sorry I shared that, but I have a really dark sense of humor. I've had a lot of trauma happen in my life, and this story, while being just funny enough and light enough to get through it, highlighted so many things that I've seen happen in the world, and how lightly we take that, and how lightly we take victims, and how we force victims to be around their victimizers all the time. I have a really creepy person in my family, a really creepy cousin, and my family my whole life has made me be around that person, and it's really uncomfortable when somebody doesn't makes you explain why you don't want to be in a room with them, because now you have to out the whole situation to everyone when maybe you don't want to talk about it, maybe it's triggering, whatever. As an adult now, I don't need to be around that person. But in this story, this character is constantly made to be, he's in a small town now, and he's constantly made to see the guy who victimizes him and continues to victimize him. So I related to this story. I found it hilarious. I found it heart-wrenching. I found it horrible. I thought the side story, being from the stalker's point of view, was insane. I think this author is insane for diving into these topics, and I love the author for it, because I think it's done in a unique way that will resonate with people who have a certain dark sensibility and a certain tragic past, who want to talk about issues in a way that doesn't make the characters who've been victimized victims. Even though they've both had bad things happen to them, one obviously more than the other, they both are proud to be bottoms, and they're both proud of their sexuality, and they're both excited to explore who they are, and they're both diving into who they are, and they're not defined by the bad things that happen to them, and they're still growing and learning about themselves, and they're okay with being flawed. And I really like those characters. I love this book. I hope you guys like this book. I hope if you read it without any trigger warnings that you weren't traumatized. And please let me know if you guys aren't already subscribed to the podcast, sure you subscribe, but you can leave a comment on either Spotify or on YouTube. If you aren't watching this on video, you can go to our YouTube, leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this. Was this way out of left park? Did you think the author was insensitive? Did you think the author was using this as like a creative way to hold up a mirror to society's reactions to assaults? And did you think it was an interesting take on small towns? Did you relate to the small town aspect? How did you feel about this? Were you excited to have a switch couple for once? I really want to know your guys' opinions. It means a lot to me when you guys interact. I really like this story. My delusional boyfriend from this story, you'll never guess, was Botan. I'm sorry, but she straps up, and she is not judgmental, and she has great tits, and she wears this like little skirt and little bob in her adulthood, and she seems to like her man, even though he's been humiliated by the whole town. She still seems to be interested in him, even knowing that he like shit his pants on the track. She doesn't seem scared off by that, and she also doesn't seem scared off that he fucked her dad and her brother. She's just like open-hearted. I don't know. She seems like a freak. I love Botan. That's my delusional boyfriend. I would definitely date her in real life, but she's not like dethroning any of my top tier boyfriends. But I am really excited to see it. Does she get like a side story couple? I love Botan. I liked that character. I like that she is a top herself, and she seems like really delicate and unsuspecting. And then you realize that she is also like blowing someone's back out. So I think that's so adorable. I love that dichotomy. Love her for that. So with that being said, that kind of wraps up our BL manga of the month for September. If you guys are listening to the other episodes this month, we've got Heaven Official's Blessing for the BL anime, and we've got our manhwa of the month. Our BL manhwa is Boss Bitch Baby, which I've heard really good things about. I'm excited about that. We also have volume 3 of Saint View Rebels. So we're finishing up that trilogy. If you guys don't read reverse harem romance, and you like romance, and you like BL, you should read Reverse Harem, because it's got usually a badass female character and then several guys who also find relationship connections with each other. So really fun. Join us for the Saint View Prison, Saint View Rebels, Saint View Psychos trilogies. Those are the ones we've covered so far. So if you're not usually into romance novels, but you have Spotify, they're for free on there if you have the Spotify like membership. Otherwise, they are on Audible. So join us for any of those. And I hope to see you guys next month. I love doing these episodes. I so appreciate you tuning in. Again, rate, review, subscribe if you can. It really helps the podcast. Watch us on YouTube if you can. I put a lot of work into redecorating my office, and now I have a cute background. So if you like to watch these little videos, then, you know, go subscribe to our YouTube. I'm working really hard on getting that kind of up and running over there. And our socials are on TikTok and Instagram, Delusional BF Book Club or Delusional Boyfriend Book Club. Our handles everywhere. Give us a follow. I'd love to post fun little things on those, and I can keep you in the loop. If you hit auto download for your downloads in the podcast app, then if I have a bonus episode, you'll always be notified about it. You'll get the download automatically in your library on the podcast app you use. Or if you follow us on socials, then you'll see when I'm talking about doing crossover episode with a different podcast or a bonus episode or a follow-up episode. So make sure to follow us on our socials, subscribe on the podcast wherever you're listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you guys come back next month, and I hope you loved Happy Crappy Life. If you didn't, please tell me why. And if you have any suggestions for next year's book club calendar, let me know. And until next time, remember, sometimes the delusion is the solution. Bye.